Hey guys, the Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to another edition of me examining the X-Men. Today, I'm going to examine X-Men issue 6, written by Stan Lee, with pencils by Jack Kirby, inks by Chick Stone, and lettering by Sam Rosen. Let's go ahead and talk about the change in inker. The first 5 issues of this series were inked by Paul Reinman, and this issue is inked by Chick Stone. And the style does look very different. Even though the penciler has stayed the same, it does look a little different. Chick Stone, I feel like he is able to bring out more expression in the faces of the characters in this issue than Paul Reinman was able to do. But I feel like Paul Reinman was really good at capturing Jack Kirby's energy and the bombast that he is usually known for in his work. So I don't necessarily like Chick Stone or Paul Reinman better than the other, but I do think that it's interesting that with a change in inker, we are able to see a change in style here. It does look a little different than when Paul Reinman was inking the book. So I thought that was very interesting because usually a lot of times when you see Jack Kirby's work, you just say, hey, it's Jack Kirby. You don't necessarily notice who is inking Jack Kirby. In this case, I do notice a difference. So I thought that was interesting and noteworthy. So anyway, the plot of this issue is that Professor Xavier and Magneto simultaneously decide that they are going to try to recruit Namor, the Submariner, the Prince of Atlantis into their teams respectively. And so Professor X and Magneto both send out their astral forms. Magneto is able to do that in these issues in the 60s. That's something that he won't be able to do once we get into the 70s on up until the present day. But at this point, they hadn't quite nailed down his power set yet, but they are both searching for Namor. Professor X decides to give up. He's going to let Magneto do his job for him, which is a little weird because they're both trying to recruit Namor, and if Magneto finds Namor first, then he's going to recruit Namor, and Professor X won't be able to. But anyway, Magneto does find Namor, and then he convinces one of Namor's subjects to convince Namor to join Magneto, because they are both mutants, apparently, and so they have something in common, which is weird because Namor has always hated the surface world, at least since his reintroduction in the 1960s, so it shouldn't matter that Magneto is a mutant because he's still a surface dweller. But anyway, Magneto is able to convince Namor to join him, and then Professor X tells the X-Men, well, this is what's going on. I know where Magneto's headquarters is. Let's go find him. Apparently, he's known where Magneto's headquarters is for a little while and has decided not to do anything about it until now. And this is also out of Magneto's 4 appearances that he has been in this series so far, he has had 3 headquarters. He had Asteroid M, he had that country that he took over, and now he has this island with a gigantic electromagnet on it, which, again, his powers are magnetic based, so you wouldn't think that he would also need a giant electromagnet to do whatever it does. It doesn't really explain what it does. But anyway, Namor comes to the island, and then Magneto wants to try and use Scarlet Witch to convince Namor to stay on the team. So she accidentally almost kills him, and then Pietro, Quicksilver, her brother, he kind of steps up when it looks like Submariner's about to attack her. And then out of nowhere, the X-Men attack, and then a big sprawl happens. Big brawl, I should say. Sprawl is a different thing. And the X-Men, they kidnap Quicksilver. Magneto, Mastermind, and Toad, they get away, but Scarlet Witch, she's worried about Quicksilver's safety, and Submariner actually stays and defends Scarlet Witch's honor. He demands that the X-Men send Pietro back, and then the X-Men decide that they're going to fight Namor. It's really weird. Once the Brotherhood is gone, I don't understand why they think that they need to fight Namor, and then Professor X comes in after about a page of fighting, and he says, we don't have any beef with Namor, we don't even have any beef with the Scarlet Witch. So then he gives Quicksilver back, and then Namor says, you know what, I don't care about any of you guys, it doesn't matter if you're mutants, I'm not going to ally myself with any of you, all surface dwellers are my enemy, which I could have told him that at the beginning of the issue. So then he goes away, and then Magneto tries to attack Namor with the big electromagnet thing, and Namor flexes really hard, and it destroys the electromagnet. And then the status quo is basically restored. Professor X says it doesn't matter that they weren't able to convince Namor to join them, as long as Namor isn't joined with Magneto, which is different than what he was saying at the beginning of the issue when he did want to recruit Namor. But now, status quo is restored, Namor is on neither team, and then both teams are as they are at the beginning of the issue. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, even though they clearly see that Magneto does not care for their safety at all, he abandoned them, they still go back to him at the end of this issue. This is the first time in this series where it seems like they are trying a sales stunt to increase sales. People like Namor, people like the Fantastic Four, let's bring this character from that series over here and see if people are going to be interested in reading X-Men if they weren't before. The only other time that they kind of sort of did this was when they took away Professor X's powers at the end of issue 4, and then they undid that at the end of issue 5. So here we see that the Submariner, he comes in from the Fantastic Four, doesn't really do anything. He joins the Brotherhood for about 3.5 minutes, and then he leaves. The plot of this issue is kind of non-existent. We basically just use the Submariner as a plot device to get the X-Men and the Brotherhood to fight a little bit, then the X-Men fight Namor just a little bit, then he goes away, and then everything's back to the way it was. Nothing really happens in this issue. We don't really get a whole lot of development of any of the characters. We get to see them do some stuff that we've been seeing them do before. Jean Grey's telekinesis is still about as strong as it has been. She tries to save Beast when he's falling from the sails, from the mast of the ship that they're on. She tries to save him in midair, and he's too heavy for her. We've seen that she shouldn't lift more than her body weight, I think, is what the professor told her in one issue. So we see that she is more or less consistently as strong as she has been, with the exception of like 1 or 2 issues. We see that at the beginning of the issue, Cyclops, he's actually smiling, and Warren even says to himself, this is the first time I've seen Cyclops smile in weeks. He should do it more. So Warren is kind of worried about Cyclops' well-being, mental well-being. That was something that we saw in issue 2, I believe, where everyone was talking about how down in the dumps Cyclops was and how he basically just needed to lighten up a little bit. We see a little bit more of that here, where Warren is kind of commenting on that Cyclops is always kind of a stick in the mud, and maybe he just needs to lighten up every once in a while, loosen up a little bit. We get to see that a little bit here. We get to see the characters using their powers, like I said, with Jean. We don't really get to see any further development of any character on the side of the Brotherhood or on the side of the X-Men. We get to see that Namor kind of has a thing for Scarlet Witch, but then as he leaves, he says, no, I don't want to open myself up to another woman. I've already got a thing for Sue Storm, and I don't want to make myself vulnerable again. So, like I said, nothing really happens in this issue other than a change in Eager. But overall, this is just kind of an issue that's there. I feel like this is one of those, like I said, they did this to try and increase sales a little bit. I don't know if it worked. We can see, I mean, the series kept going for another 60 issues, so at least sales didn't get any worse, probably. But anyway, that is all that I have to say about this issue. Like I said, not a lot happened here, so consider this issue examined.